Morning light filtered gently through the thin curtains of the small family kitchen. The smell of fresh pancakes filled the air as the mother moved easily between the stove and the table. The father tied his boots, preparing for another long day of work, while the children laughed and played nearby. It was an ordinary morning, warm with routine and quiet love. Everything appeared peaceful. The neighbor passed by and exchanged friendly greetings at the door, unaware that anything was wrong. The house carried the familiar sounds of daily life, clinking plates, soft footsteps, and the comfort of togetherness. Yet beneath the calm surface, small shadows lingered. An unopened envelope marked with overdue bills rested on the table, silently demanding attention. The parents exchanged brief, worried glances, careful not to disturb the children's happiness. A moment later, a stranger appeared at the door, his presence brief but unsettling, leaving behind a sense of unease that hung in the air. The family returned to their morning routine, pretending nothing had changed. Laughter resumed, breakfast continued, and the door closed once more. No one realized this simple, beautiful morning would be the last time the family would ever be seen together. Days passed, and the house remained strangely quiet. Curtains never opened in the morning. No lights appeared at night. The neighbor, who was used to seeing the family leave early and return before sunset, began to feel uneasy. One afternoon, curiosity turned into concern. The front door stood slightly open, swaying gently in the wind. Inside, plates of half-eaten food rested on the table, untouched and cold. Shoes remained neatly by the doorway. The family vehicle was still parked in the yard, exactly where it had been days earlier. Everything suggested that the family had left suddenly and never returned. The neighbor contacted the police. Officers arrived and carefully searched the house, room by room. Drawers were unopened, furniture was undisturbed. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no evidence of violence. It was as if the family had simply vanished into thin air. The silence inside the home felt heavy and unnatural. The absence of answers only deepened the mystery. What should have been an ordinary house now stood as a question no one could yet explain. Weeks turned into months as the local police continued their search. Neighbors were questioned, nearby towns were alerted, and every possible lead was followed. But each path ended in silence. No witnesses came forward, no evidence surfaced. The trail slowly grew cold. Missing posters, once bright with hope, began to fade under the sun and rain. Corners curled, ink washed away, and faces slowly disappeared from notice boards and shop windows. People stopped stopping to read them. Life in the town moved forward. New families arrived, children grew older, and routines replaced worry. Yet quiet rumors lingered in whispers, stories of strange visitors, hidden deaths, and late-night movements that no one could ever prove. The truth remained buried beneath speculation. Eventually, the case was officially marked unsolved. The files were boxed, labeled, and placed on dusty shelves. Though the town tried to forget, unanswered questions continued to echo in the silence, waiting for a day when the truth might finally surface. 30 years later, the land on the outskirts of town was no longer quiet. Construction equipment broke the soil that had not been disturbed for decades. As workers dug deeper, their machines struck something unnatural, fragments that did not belong to the earth. The work stopped immediately. What emerged from the ground were human remains, hidden and forgotten beneath layers of soil and time. Authorities quickly secured the area, sealing it off from the public. The stillness returned, heavier than before. Given the age of the remains and the circumstances of their discovery, federal authorities were notified. The FBI was called in, and with them came the reopening of a story the town had tried to leave behind. Inside a federal office, old case files were reopened for the first time in decades. Photographs yellowed with age were laid out again. Witness statements were reread, this time with fresh eyes and modern understanding. What once seemed insignificant now stood out. Small inconsistencies, timelines that did not quite align, statements that contradicted one another. Advances in technology allowed investigators to analyze evidence in ways that had not been possible before. For the first time in 30 years, the case no longer felt dead. There was movement. There was hope. Under careful supervision, the remains were respectfully exhumed. Forensic experts worked slowly and methodically, treating each bone and fragment as a voice from the past. Scientific analysis began to tell its story. The age, the number of bodies, and the evidence of trauma all pointed toward a chilling conclusion. These were not random remains. They belonged to the family that had disappeared without a trace 30 decades earlier. As the investigation deepened, a long-buried clue surfaced. A forgotten land record revealed a transfer that had never been fully explained. Shortly after, an elderly witness came forward, burdened by years of silence and regret. The new information pointed toward someone the family had trusted, a person who lived close, spoken kindly, and never left town. The circle of suspicion narrowed, and the truth began to take shape. The FBI brought the suspect in for questioning. At first, the answers were calm and rehearsed, but as evidence was presented, cracks began to form. Contradictions piled up, timelines collapsed, the weight of 30 years pressed heavily on the room. Finally, faced with undeniable proof, the truth could no longer be denied. What had been hidden for decades was finally spoken. Surviving relatives were informed. For them, the truth brought both pain and peace. Questions that had haunted their lives were finally answered, even if the answers came too late. A quiet memorial was held. Names once printed on fading posters were spoken aloud again, remembered not as mysteries, but as lives. The FBI closed the case, marking it solved at last. Time can bury the truth, but it cannot erase it. Beneath silence, beneath fear, beneath the passing of years, the truth waits patiently. Justice may be delayed, but it is never denied forever. Memories endure, voices return, and even after 30 years, the past can still rise to be heard. The family was gone, but they were no longer forgotten.